I have made a few videos about the game side of Symbaroum, its core mechanics, its combat rules, and its abilities. But you can't play a tabletop role playing game without accessing the books and materials that lay down the rules and the world. Free League makes this easy by offering a free quick start guide, which is on its own a substantial gateway into Symbaroum, enough that it's all you really need to play your first short campaign. But what about when it comes to laying down some of your hard earned cash to really get into the game's deeper mechanics and lore? That's what I'm here to evaluate today, and I'm hoping this will serve as a quick buyer's guide for anyone looking to get into Symbaroum. But first, let's go over what I'm not covering in this video. Be aware that Free League has a series of products called the Ruins of Symbaroum. This is not to be confused with the actual standalone game. Ruins is a port of the game that includes the lore and builds transferred into the rules of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I've played enough D&D at this point, and I think that Symbaroum has enough to shine on its own, so I truly don't care about Ruins. But for what it's worth, the reviews on Ruins seem to be good. Unsurprising because Free League as a company pretty consistently makes reliable gaming products for a fair price. Next, Symbaroum itself has plenty of written adventure content. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you probably know that I don't usually run pre-written adventures in any game and tend to have a low opinion of them, so I'm not diving into Symbaroum's canon stories. I'm sure they do a decent job for what they are, but I'm not the one to buy them or review them. When I look at the following four products, I will be considering the cost to the consumer. I will be asking if the content in the book meaningfully adds to the game beyond what we are given in the free Quick Start Guide. In my past reviews, I've leaned towards the subjective side of things where my own preferences heavily weighed my ranking and recommendation. But in this review, I'm going to try a more objective stance when evaluating what a book has to offer. Of course, all opinions and reviews are still subjective to a degree, and I'll look forward to seeing if you agree or disagree with my ratings in the comments. Let's get started. While the core rulebook would appear to be the most essential purchase for a serious Symbaroum table, it has the most difficult task of justifying its presence. Half of the 263-page core rulebook has been cut out and pasted onto the 119-page free Quick Start Guide. That half includes all the essential mechanics, character creation, and background lore needed to play the game. So, what's in the remaining 144 pages? And are those contents worth $40 to $50? First, the core rulebook gives you double the lore, including sections on important setting cities of Thistlehold, Indaros, and Karvosti. These are substantial additions that can easily find use in your game. On the character creation side, the core rulebook adds the inessential but flavorful occupations list. Then there is a full 70 pages dedicated to the Game Master's Guide, providing important rules and guidelines for you to build and run your own adventures in Symbaroum. Finally, there's the Promised Land Adventure Path. The Quick Start Guide offers its own short adventure, but it stands at only 6 pages while the Promised Land stands at 20. Plus, let's not forget you're getting a high quality hardback printing of the rules instead of a PDF file. The core rulebook has plenty of great art, the cover is iconic, and the book will look great on your RPG shelf. Some groups will be satisfied with just the quick start guide, but I think most who decide to play the game in earnest will want to spring for the core rulebook. It's a good buy for a great game, and I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. The Game Master's Guide gets tricky. Remember when I said the core rulebook includes a robust Game Master's section? That section in that book gives you the necessary tools anyone needs to run a game in Symbaroum. The Game Master's Guide then becomes a bonus advanced supplement with some extra tips and tricks for Symbaroum runners. There's some traps, some artifacts, some ruins, and some mass combat rules. These are all good things that can add plenty to your game, but their description and implementation is kept fairly brief. There's a lot of text dedicated to the craft of telling good stories in a role playing game, and while this is well presented, it's going to feel familiar to anyone with one or two other systems' game mastery guides on their RPG shelf. The Game Master's Guide is not a bad book, but I can't honestly say it's very necessary. If this is your first book like this, it's probably a 6 out of 10. If you're like me and you've already learned arc building and table management from other books, it's more like a 4 out of 10. So, for my final rating, we'll take the average and get a score of 5 out of 10. Let me start by saying that I do not love Symbaroum's Advanced Player's Guide. I happen to think that there are enough player options already in the core rulebook to satisfy most tables, so I just don't see the need for more. But then I see that the Advanced Player's Guide is sold for only $25 to $35, and I have to give a double take. I had skimmed the Advanced Player's Guide, and while I wasn't impressed, I recognized that it offered a lot of content to tables looking for more robust character options. So I got the book and did a deep dive. Here's what I found. First, the book offers 28 pages of archetypes and occupations. These are optional guidelines to help character creation, but in the APG, there are also 17 professions. These act like prestige classes in 3.5 D&D and Pathfinder by restricting the class to players who select required builds before unlocking the profession and an associated unique ability. While I think that this system detracts from Symbaroum's anything goes, no class identity, I can't deny that it's an attractive offer for certain kinds of players looking for some direction. Plus, these professions are brimming with flavor and lore of the setting rather than just being a checkbox of clustered abilities, adding an element of immersion to the game world. Overall, a neat feature. The APG doubles the amount of player races by offering elf, abducted human, dwarf, troll, and even undead. I can take or leave some of these, but again, they are going to be cool options for players looking for something different while not taking anything away from me or adding too much extra accommodations as a game master. There's a whole subsystem of boons and burdens. Boons cost you additional XP at character creation, and burdens grant you XP. These special qualities are more flavorful than mechanical in nature, but they can really help flesh out your character and the table's story right at the start. It's a lengthy section that will take some getting used to, but overall a solid addition. Next, we have a ton of new abilities, plus 3 new magical traditions with associated mystical powers and a few new rituals. There are 31 new abilities, once again almost doubling the options from the core rulebook. Keep in mind that some of these abilities are locked behind certain archetypes or professions, but this is still a satisfying amount of new content. Finally, the book adds on some alternate rules and 20 pages of weapons, armor, and equipment. This is a short book at only 135 pages, but every page is stacked with something neat for your next character. Not all of it personally appeals to me, but that's not the point. The point is providing options for different kinds of players, and the APG does that in spades. Considering the low cost, I think the Advanced Player's Guide is a top notch product that will add to almost every table's enjoyment of the game, and I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. The last book I'll review is the first book I bought after the core rulebook, and that is the Monster Codex. Symbaroum's core rulebook offers player-facing rules, a game master's guide, and a bestiary all in one, but I always found the bestiary section lacking with only 37 entries. That's a lot to start your game with, but most tables will run through most, if not all, of these monsters and NPCs in a long campaign. I needed some more material when it came to adversaries, so did the Monster Codex deliver? Hell yes, it did. For starters, there are 27 all new types of monsters, some of which have their own subtypes. Each of these 27 monsters comes with a full page of lore explanation, brand new art, and a 1-page encounter pitch that serves as a random module table for encounters on the fly. I have one quibble with this section, and that is the interesting new styling on the pages themselves. Symbaroum's other books have a clean, pared down look, but the Monster Codex adds this wide margin of Viking wood carving. It's flashy, and I'm sure some people like it, but for me, it's a little too gaudy for the rest of Symbaroum's established style. Next, the book moves on from multiple page monsters to short NPC stat blocks. This will cover different levels of civilized beings, as well as common beasts, and a few friendly creatures like the battle trained horse that was left out of the core rulebook. For these entries, the Monster Codex dispenses with the deep lore and offers a brief paragraph to each monster or NPC. Once again, I have a quibble, and that is that while the rapid fire style offers more than enough material for any game master to fill the gaps in their encounter rosters, there's not much organization to the entries. Stat blocks bleed over from one page to the next, and on more than one occasion, I've found it difficult to find the exact NPC I'm looking for, even when I know it's there. There's also one larger flaw with Symbaroum's monster stat blocks as a whole, and that is the exclusion of a monster's abilities. Monsters and NPCs have abilities and levels just like player characters, but unlike your full player character sheet, the stat block simply states the name and level of the ability with no description. Sometimes the ability is passive and included in the stats, but for active abilities, you'll have to flip back and forth between one book or another to remind yourself how to run a monster in combat. The book could have used a quality of life improvement in this regard, but I understand this might have ballooned the page count and the price. Regardless, the stat block section offers 86 new monsters and NPCs for your game. If that wasn't enough, the book isn't done yet. There's notes and guidance on monstrous traits, balancing encounters, monster hunting, diseases, and a short but informative section on how to create your own monsters in Symbaroum. The Monster Codex closes out at 191 pages and will run you $35 to $45 for a comprehensive plethora of material. This gets another 9 out of 10. Thanks for watching. I hope this was informative and will guide your Symbaroum purchases for your own table or your next RPG Christmas gift. As always, I'd love to hear from other Symbaroum veterans to tell me what I may have missed or what I got right. Have a nat one day. Bye bye.